A manufactured dumb blonde. That's how she was frequently dismissed by her contemporaries. A fragile, easily manipulated vessel for the silver screen. Yet, behind closed doors, she systematically dismantled a billion-dollar studio monopoly. She was, in reality, an uncredited business genius. And her actions were considered so subversive, so quietly threatening, that they drew active, relentless surveillance from the FBI. How exactly did a woman, written off by executives as just another cog in a machine, architect such a flawless rebellion in plain sight?
Welcome back to Learning with Pratik. If you're new here, I try to increase neuroplasticity by exploring a new topic every day. I do all the reading and researching so you don't have to. Today, in this explainer, we're looking past the platinum hair, the famous white dress, and the tabloid tragedy to examine the calculating intellect of Marilyn Monroe. We're going to trace the deliberate steps of a revolutionary, someone who brought an outdated Hollywood machine to its absolute knees.
So, let's start at the beginning. Part 1. The Making of Marilyn, Norma Jeane's Early Years. Before the world knew the icon Marilyn Monroe, there was just Norma Jeane Mortenson. And that glamorous persona we all recognize on screen, it was actually a meticulously constructed mask, forged in the fires of a deeply traumatic childhood. The extent of that early instability is haunting. Placed in a foster home shortly after birth by a mother who was later institutionalized, she suffered abuse from a lodger by the time she was 8. By 9, she was sent to an orphanage, and she entered a hasty marriage at 16 literally just to avoid being relocated again. This relentless upheaval didn't just break her, it necessitated a profound psychological coping mechanism.
During those incredibly dark years, her primary sanctuary was the movie theater. She later remembered it vividly, saying, "A little kid all alone, and I loved it." But here's the thing, she wasn't just escaping, she was studying. Her horrific childhood instilled in her this clear-eyed pragmatism. She developed an escape fantasy that eventually crystallized into an iron-willed ambition to become a star, fully aware of the compromises required to advance in a ruthless industry.
Which brings us to Part 2, the studio system trap, cogs in the engine.
That fierce childhood ambition brought her to the 1950s, right into the jaws of the Hollywood studio system. But she quickly realized that this industry was systematically designed to strip away her autonomy entirely. A studio contract back then meant actors were essentially treated as cogs in a massive machine. 20th Century Fox wielded dictatorial power over her career. They decided her roles, her directors, her salary. They were dead set on cashing in on her massive sex appeal while entirely dismissing her actual talent and intellect.
And the sheer scale of this exploitation is honestly staggering. Take 1953, for example. Monroe starred in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which went on to become Fox's highest-grossing film to date. Yet while her co-star Jane Russell successfully negotiated a salary of roughly $200,000, Monroe was locked into an outdated contract. The absolute hottest box office draw in Hollywood was being paid a mere $1,500 a week.
Part 3. Breaking the studio, taking on Zanuck.
For Monroe, being severely underpaid and openly disrespected was the final straw. So she initiated a shrewd, highly tactical rebellion against studio head Darryl F. Zanuck. When Zanuck tried to force her into this fluffy musical called The Girl in Pink Tights, she took precise, methodical steps to break her contract. First, she demanded to read the script, a standard request that Fox flatly refused. Consequently, on December 15, 1953, she just refused to show up on set. Despite intense legal threats, and Zanuck promising to completely end her career, she held her ground. She accepted suspension, risking total career suicide just to assert her creative dominance.
Now, most actors would have folded under that kind of pressure. Monroe did the exact opposite. While away from the cameras, she partnered with photographer Milton Green. Together, they established Marilyn Monroe Productions, making her the first woman since Mary Pickford to set up an independent film company. This historical move proved once and for all that she wasn't just a screen siren, she was a revolutionary businesswoman, laying the groundwork to dictate her own future.
Part 4, the Korea Detour, entertaining the troops.
But even with her own production company, 20th Century Fox still needed to realize her true quantifiable value. So, to prove her global indispensability, Monroe executed a brilliant maneuver. While on her honeymoon in Japan with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, she took a solo detour to the recently divided Korean peninsula. Over just 4 days in freezing 30-degree winter weather, wearing a summer dress, she put on 10 shows for an estimated 100,000 U.S. servicemen. It was a massive, overwhelming demonstration of her untouchable star power, broadcast directly back to the studio executives who thought they could silence her.
And the trip was deeply transformative for her on a personal level, too. She later said, "It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I never felt like a star before in my heart." That experience on stage cured her debilitating stage fright and gave her the validation the studio had always denied her. Returning to the US with unmatched, untouchable popularity, Fox could no longer ignore her. They finally surrendered to her demands.
Which brings us to Part 5, FBI Files and Final Years, The Price of Independence.
She had won her battle against the studio system, but her hard-won creative control soon collided with intense, tragic contradictions. On New Year's Eve 1955, she secured a new contract worth $100,000 per movie, plus unprecedented creative control. She even married the Pulitzer-winning intellectual Arthur Miller. Yet simultaneously, her movements were being relentlessly tracked by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI under Foreign Counterintelligence, searching for leftist ties. Despite her brilliant business renegotiations and undeniable acting talent, she remained psychologically tormented, trapped by the very dumb blonde stereotype she'd originally weaponized, right up until her tragic death at age 36.
Which leaves us with this final, haunting question to frame her enduring legacy. How does the memory of a woman who single-handedly brought the studio system to its knees remain so often trapped in the shadow of a manufactured blonde persona? It is a profound reminder of how powerful and how suffocating a carefully constructed image can be in our popular culture. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you have something particular in mind. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow, we open a different page. Until then, Pratik out.